Veil of Ashes. Prologue. The Fall of Tekonia. For 100 millennia, the Tekonian Empire stood as the crown of the Milky Way, unrivaled in splendor, unmatched in dominion. From the blazing galactic core to the farthest spiral arms, its banners of bronze and gold marked the law of the gods. No empire before had stretched so wide, no sovereign power had endured so long. 80% of the stars bent to Tekonia's will, and those who did not still paid homage, for none could resist the throne. At its heart lay Tekon Prime, the world crown of the empire. Its spires rose higher than mountains, bronze-veined towers alive with light, each vein glowing like rivers of dawn. Rings encircled the planet, not for war but for beauty. Orbital gardens, libraries that held the voices of thousands of nations, palaces of woven light where the banners of a galaxy gathered. Its seas were carved with singing stones, its winds carried chants of 100 peoples. From orbit, it did not resemble a world, but a crown set upon the galaxy, every city a gem, every temple a flame. To walk its streets was to walk through the living memory of the Milky Way. Tekon Prime had been the living heart of the Milky Way. Its bronze-veined spires sang with the voices of griots, each hall carved with the victories of 100 kings and queens. Its orbital gardens carried forests drawn from every vassal world, crowns of green that drifted above the blue of sea and cloud. The streets were mosaics of nations, inlays of stone and metal, telling histories in pattern and light. The seas shimmered with singing stones, whose resonances held ancestral names, while banners of woven radiance rose and fell with the planet's winds like tides of colour, visible even from orbit. Pilgrims did not come only to kneel before a throne. They came to hear the planet itself, to stand within the chorus of a civilization that had learned to bind memory into matter. To walk those avenues was to see a galaxy in unity, each people contributing craft and voice until the world itself became a mirror of all dominion. Tekon Prime's skies shimmered with veils of aurora bronze, ribbons of light that rose from the world's magnetic seas and crowned the horizon in fire. In the orbital rings, entire delegations gathered. The Serathi carved flight poems across the void, the Zalari lit their lattice forges as ceremonial beacons, and the Nyori unrolled archives written on beams of starlight. Each nation saw itself reflected in the capital, and in that reflection believed the empire eternal. To stand upon Tekon Prime was to stand in the heart of the Milky Way, and to feel its pulse. The imperial family ruled here, a dynasty unbroken for 100 millennia. Kings and queens ruled together, co-sovereigns embodying the dual strength of creation and balance. Their coronations were celebrated in call and response chants that carried across the galaxy, their names etched into bronze flame. To their subjects they were gods, not in metaphor but in truth, for their blood commanded powers none other could touch. The bronze fire that ran through Tekonia's fleets answered only to them. The Black Fleet, the divine armada of the Empire, obeyed no admiral, no general, no priest, only the blood of the throne. Tekonia's strength lay not only in arms but in integration. Conquest was followed not by erasure but by absorption. Each empire defeated was bound into the Tekonian whole, its strengths woven into the body of the empire. From the windswept towers of Cygnus Reach came the Serathi, avian nomads who once raided unchallenged across storms. Tekonia defeated them not by slaughter but by mirroring their flight with bronze-winged ships. Given honor instead of extinction, the Serathi became navigators of the empire, their resonance woven into the songs of the Black Fleet. From the burning deserts of the Carina Verge came the Zalari, reptilian forgemasters whose warlords had spilled blood for centuries. The Tekonian queen severed their water convoys, forcing surrender without massacre. She rebuilt their forges in bronze and gold, and from that day forward, every lance of fire in Tekonia's fleets bore their mark. Others too gave their gifts. The Niori of Perseus yielded their archives, entire histories surrendered into Tekonia's libraries. The Hirasi Tide of the Outer Rim gave their star whales and void song. The Koreshi Concord, warrior states of the Orion Spur, were broken in battle but remade as legions beneath Tekonia's banners. Even the crystalline Jarathi of Karina lent their artistry, weaving resonance shields that wrapped citadels in flame. Tekonia was not one people but all peoples, bound together by the imperial blood. That was the secret of its eternity. Conquest became rebirth, and integration made it unassailable. Yet across the void lay its shadow. The Andromeda Galaxy shone as a twin across intergalactic darkness, and within it, an empire of destroyers stirred. Unlike Tekonia, they were no builders. They were scourge. Every 1,000 years they crossed the void, pouring through the Triangulum Bridge with fleets beyond counting. Their purpose was never conquest. They came only to burn, to sterilize, to scour all life. Across the void, their destroyer fleets were feared as a tide of unmaking. Where Tekonia raised citadels, they hollowed worlds into husks. Their vessels were not ships, but engines of erasure, jagged hulks veined with black fire, their hulls drinking starlight as though feeding upon suns. Where they struck, life ended. Seas boiled into vapor, forests into ash, archives into silence. Civilizations vanished as if they had never been, their memory scoured from the stars. The Niori said the Andromeda fleets carried void engines that unmade not only life, but history itself, leaving nothing behind but silence. Whether myth or truth, no realm that faced them alone endured long enough to test the tale. The galaxy gave them many names: the Scourge, the Silent Host, the Burners. To Tekonia, they were simply the cycle, the shadow that rose each millennium. Tekonian children were taught that their empire's eternity rested on this struggle, that the Milky Way endured only because the imperial bloodline stood between life and annihilation. Each war grew worse. Each invasion carried more fleets, first hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands of black-winged armadas swept across the spiral arms. Tekonia broke them again and again, but each time the scars deepened, each time the cost grew higher. By the reign of King Zerakesh and Queen Amarian, the destroyers had learned to aim not at the arms but at the heart. They no longer wasted themselves against scattered defences. They struck directly for Tekon Prime, determined to sever the crown from the galaxy. Each time they came, Tekonia rose. Kings and queens summoned the fleets of the Milky Way. 50,000 ships would march, drawn from every subject realm. Sirathi charted the storms. Zalari forges lit the weapons. Koreshi legions filled the void. The galaxy bent to Tekonia's will, not by choice but by necessity, for without Tekonia, all would burn. And always, when the tide turned darkest, the Black Fleet soared. 4,000 ships, dark as obsidian, wings arched like falcons, bronze veins blazing with fire. They carried no crew, obeyed no admiral. They answered only to the blood of Tekonia. When a king or queen entered the hall of summons, the ships awakened, their veins flaring as if rejoicing at the presence of their sovereign. A whisper of command could move thousands in perfect unison. Priests said the bronze fire in their wings was drawn from the blood itself, that each vessel carried the memory of the dynasty, their voices the echo of the gods. Whether truth or legend, none doubted, for without Tekonian blood, they were silence and stone, and with it, they were the falcons of eternity. This cycle endured for ages. The people of the Milky Way believed it destiny, the heartbeat of history. Tekonia would rise, the Black Fleet would answer, and Andromeda would be broken, until the age of King Zerakesh and Queen Amarian. The 1,000th year came again, and the destroyers poured through the void. Their armadas burned the rim and advanced toward the core. Zerakesh summoned the fleets of the Empire, calling from Scutum, Perseus, Carina, Cygnus. Every banner answered. 50,000 ships gathered, the greatest armada ever assembled, mustering in the capital system. In the Hall of Summons, the king spoke the words of his blood and commanded the Black Fleet to rise. For the first time in 100 millennia, the gates remained silent. The wings of bronze did not open. The bond was broken. Still the fleets marched. 50,000 ships charged into the void, clashing with Andromeda's hordes in a battle that lit the galaxy from arm to arm. Entire sectors burned. Legions shattered. In the heart of battle, the flagship of Zerakesh fell, his crown shattering with him. The destroyers pressed inward. Vassals were erased, citadels broken, the galaxy's shield pierced. At last, Tekon Prime itself was surrounded. 8,000 ships encircled the capital, raining fire until the spires collapsed, the seas boiled, and the rings cracked apart. The sky above Tekon Prime was filled with shadow. 8,000 destroyer ships, veined in black fire, hung over the world, blotting out stars, their bombardments shaking the crust itself. Rings shattered, their gardens torn into ribbons of light, and orbital citadels fell burning into the seas. Waves of fire rolled across continents, mountains cracked into canyons, and the once bright mosaics of the capital were buried in ash. Even the underground sanctuaries could not shield the people from the tremors of annihilation. The last jewel of the galaxy was being hammered into dust beneath a storm of silence. Amarian walked through her burning world, the infant pressed to her chest, statues of kings cracked, banners turned to ash, and the bronze. The light that once glowed with life now bled with flame. Her steps did not falter. She carried not only her daughter but the last ember of Tekonia itself. The palace shook around her, yet her focus did not waver. As the child stirred, she bent her head in the hush between falling stones and embered banners, letting breath warm the small crown of a brow too young to know fear. She asked for nothing grand. Survival would be victory. Life would be defiance. She knew the empire was burning, but its line lived in the quiet pulse she felt against her palm, and in that pulse she trusted the seed of a future she would never see. If no crown ever touched those small temples, if no bronze banners ever flew again, the child's living would still be enough. She passed windows once fashioned of bronze glass, each pane etched with the triumphs of kings. Now they shattered under shockwaves, their shards raining like meteors upon the palace floor. Mosaics that told the story of Tekonia's first victories split down their center as flames licked across the stones. Amarian's gaze lingered on the statues of the emperors who had risen and fallen, each one cracking, each one toppling as though bowing into ruin before her. She whispered to her daughter of her father, King Zerakesh, whose courage had been flame in the void, and told her the blood of that fire still flowed in her veins. The child would not inherit his crown, but she would carry his strength. At her side drifted a sphere the size of a closed fist, bronze-veined and humming with low resonance. It was no ornament. It had waited in the vaults for generations, older than Tekonia's first coronations, a relic that held layered memory and machine, song and mechanism bound together. Archivists had called it a keeper, engineers a sentinel, priests a companion. Amarian had kept it for this walk. She brushed its runes with her blood and felt the orb aligned to her will, its hum settling to the child's breathing, as if learning that rhythm. Its charge was simple and absolute. Watch, guide, protect. The sphere's resonance grew steadier as if it had heard her charge. Within its bronze lattice were more than archives. It carried fragments of every people Tekonia had bound to itself. Cyrathi star songs, Zilari forge codes, Nyori libraries, Koreshi war chants, Hirasi void song. all wove together inside its humming core. It was not only a guardian but the echo of the Empire itself, distilled into one sentinel. Amarian thought of it as the last teacher she could give her daughter, a voice to guide when hers was gone, a memory of all that Tekonia had been. The gate of Arches awaited. Its bronze pillars were older than Tekonia, older than memory, seeded by powers beyond the stars. It was not Tekonian craft, but something other, drawn from dimensions unseen. For millennia it had lain dormant, its purpose unknown. Amarian knew the truth. The gate was no passage for armies, it was a cradle for one life only. To ignite it required more than blood. It would draw upon the very star of Tekon Prime. Amarian had known this fate before she entered the chamber. To send her daughter forward, she would have to bind her own life to the arches. One could pass only if another was given. The power would drain the sun itself, tearing it into fury. Tekon Prime would not survive, nor would the fleets besieging it. She laid the child within the bronze glow. She set the companion sphere into the infant's hand, its runes dimming to a soft pulse as it accepted the girl's small grasp. The arches flared, their runes ignited with the resonance of her blood. The star above them shuddered, its heart torn wide. Amarian's breath became fire, her life force pouring into the gate. Tekon Prime's sun fractured, bronze light breaking into white fury. The star collapsed. A supernova bloomed, a wound upon the galaxy. 8,000 destroyer ships were consumed, their annihilation bright enough to be seen across the spiral arms. Tekon Prime itself was shattered, seas and spires torn into silence. Amarian perished with her people, but her death was not only sacrifice, it was vengeance, the denial of triumph to their enemies. The blast wave scoured the Tekon system, light burning brighter than creation, then fading to silence. The destroyers were gone, their fleets turned to molten debris, cast adrift in the void. Tekon Prime was no more, its orbit filled with dust and fire, the crown of the Milky Way shattered into embers. From across the spiral arms, watchers saw the flare rise and fade, and in the absence that followed, they knew Tekonia had fallen. The Empire's song ended not in surrender but in fire, leaving a wound upon the galaxy that would never heal. And in the same moment, the child passed through the gate, hidden beyond reach, cast into a future where the scourge could not follow. The empire of 100 millennia was ash. The galaxy lay broken. But one ember remained, born through fire into the ages to come. Her name was Sosan,